didn't sign that waiver, so we'll tell those stories offline.
Perfect. Okay, well, with that, we'll get started. I have Matthew Jarvis today. I'm Lacey Schrum. Matthew, it's so fun to have you. We cut up a little bit on LinkedIn sometimes, and we just found that we have a fascination and love for books. And so it's just like so fun to hang out with you. And today we get to talk revenue. So thanks for
Yeah,
coming.
which is another shared passion of ours, right? Know what you're charging, charge what you're worth, and
Yeah,
quit telling yourself stories about it, right?
yeah, make that money.
Make that money.
So for those of you watching that are new to Matthew Jarvis, the Perfect RIA, he does a ton of things. One of the things that he has done is he's written a book, Delivering Massive Value, which has a chapter dedicated to raising your fees and charging what you're worth, which as a software founder that built a company on AUM fee revenue and collecting it and making it easy and giving you analytics. This is super interesting to me because I see so many advisors every day that come in and are not charging what they're worth, and sometimes they're not even charging. So thanks for joining
Yeah, for
us.
sure. Yeah, no, my pleasure. I see that all the time. One of the first things we always have advisors do when we coach them is run a list of their clients with assets and with how much they're actually charging, not how much they think they're charging, and how much they actually are, which Lacey, I know is something that smart KX can do really smoothly. A lot of advisors have to build these clunky spreadsheets, but what we always discover without fail, and I'd be curious if your experience is different, there's always a dozen, dozens of exceptions. Sometimes there's more exceptions than not where a client has agreed to pay X, and even though they agreed this, they're charging them some number below that, which
I
just
know.
doesn't even make any sense.
I know. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. And it's
Mhm.
like, as you say in the book, there's always an excuse. Like there's always, or not,
Mhm.
I shouldn't say excuse. That's a little bit too aggressive, but there's
Sure.
always a very good, feel good reason
Yep.
that they're not paying the full fee. And like, I think you and I will can agree on the terminology. Like it's kind of BS.
It
Like
is.
it
Yeah.
kind of
That's
makes
it's head
me feel
trash. Yeah.
good, but it's
Yep.
not necessarily what's best for everyone involved.
Yeah, a
So,
lot of times it's accidental, right? It's like, well, hey, they had these accounts and then they retired and they opened up another IRA and we never set up billing on that. Or, you know what, this person's been a client for a long time and we don't even charge them a fee at all. And I'm okay if you want to intentionally say, hey, I have 5 exceptions per 100 clients. My mother-in-law is a client. I'm not going to charge her. That's fine. That's one of your 5. Everyone else has to be to your fee schedule. There just can't be wiggle room there.
right. So one of those things that the overall book struck me as more the advisors on LinkedIn love to compare themselves to attorneys, right? Like they're like at this at this level. They do.
It's true. No, it's true. It's comical,
And
but it's true. Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of things I could go in on that. But one of the things that attorneys are notoriously bad at is running a business versus a practice.
Hmm.
And so I've seen
Hmm.
a lot of RIAs kind of talk about their practice, and your book kind of wraps up like, no, this is a business. Like this
Has
isn't
to
a
be business.
practice.
Yeah.
And so that
Yeah.
for me like was sort of the overall theme of like the book itself. And so do
Hmm.
you see that a lot in your coaching that people are thinking about it more of a practice?
Yeah, constantly, right? Because a lot of us, especially those of us that do it a long time, we started from the ground up. And so it was like us and a couple of clients. We didn't come in as, I mean, I came in as a Gen 2, but it was very struggling practice. We didn't come into like a Fidelity or some formalized thing where it was all set up. We were kind of making it up as we went along. And so we got in this habit of let's just keep making it up as we go along instead of stepping back and saying, hey, I need to run this as a business, right? If I'm going to have clients, they need to pay a fee. It needs to be transparent, it needs to be accurate. I need to provide value for that, but it can't just be I charge Bob this and I charge Jane that, and on Tuesdays I do this, and on Thursdays we do that. It's got to be run like a business, and there's so many benefits, right? The client has a better experience, the advisor has a better experience, they make more money. Ultimately, their practice is worth more. It's a win all the way around.
And you're really getting like the golden ticket of capitalism. Like if you're not giving them enough value, they will leave. And
one Hundred percent.
you'll have some lines there of like how far you can go and should go for what you're giving.
Yeah. Which, by the way, is a mantra of mine, not like in a, like I'm a cold-hearted capitalist, but like when the monster that's under my bed that says if I raise my fees, all my clients will leave, I remind myself of like, hey, this is a free market transaction. Like if in fact a client decides that the value is not there, they'll let me know. But until that point, I have to accurately assume that they're in fact getting value they think is worth the fee. Even if when I get up in the morning, I think, I don't know if I'm really worth anything. Every client, every time they agree to that fee transaction is saying, yeah, we think we're getting value here. And I'm just not going to argue with them about that, right? Don't talk them
Right.
out of it.
Right. Like it works both ways. Like when you feel like you maybe are giving more value than you're charging for, you can increase that and kind of see where you
Yeah.
get pushback. And the same way where you're like, everyone has them. The days you wake up and you're like, I'm not worth this. I can't believe this. It's like, no, I got people like that are depending on me and they're paying me to do this thing.
Hmm.
And they're
Yeah.
saying
Yeah.
I'm
And if
worth it.
you go through this. Yeah. And if you want to do pro bono financial planning, which is a noble thing to do, there's a place for that, right? Call the FPA, call the CFP board, do it with your local charity. Don't do it in your office. Your office is a business. And if you want to give back to the community, that's great. Run a really successful practice, make good money, and then outside of that, support your community.
Yeah. That's
But
great
don't mix them
advice.
up. No.
Yeah. Um, so the when you say initially when you do the analysis, what details of the analysis are you looking at? Are you purely looking at what's your blended rate, your overall firm blended rate versus every single client? Are you looking at time spent? Are you looking at average client spend? Like what are the metrics?
Yeah, I always like to start with the simplest and go deeper. So the very first thing I'm going to do, Lacey, is say, hey, what's your total AUM? I'll give you a really specific example. I've rounded the numbers a little bit for the math, but I worked with an advisor, really good advisor. She had $100 million of AUM at a 1% fee schedule, and her gross revenue was $600,000. Now, for those of you listening that are slow at math, 100 million at 1% is not 600,000, it's 1 million. And so I told this advisor, we'll call her Jane. I said, hey, Jane, one of these numbers is wrong. Now, the truth was all three were wrong, but at least one of these numbers were wrong. And she says, no, I have 100 million. I can see it right here. And I have a 1% fee. I can see it right here on my advisor agreement. And I have 600,000 revenue. I can see it right here in my P&L. Okay, again, one of these numbers is wrong. And so the first thing we need to do is pull back that and say, all right, where it is. Now, what it always ends up being, at least you know this in advance, the punchline to the joke is that her actual billing rate was far below 1%. In fact, it was 0.6. Now, there wasn't necessarily any accounts that itself were 0.6, but there was all these accounts at nothing, some at 0.8, some at 0.5, whatever it was. And so for her, she came to our coaching because she wanted to streamline her practice. She wanted to make more money. She was trying to decide if she should leave her broker dealer. And we said, hey, before you do anything else, just levelize your fee. Just charge what you told people you were going to charge, and you'll add not 400,000 to your top line, 400,000 to your bottom line. Let's take this one step further. If she had 600,000 of gross, let's say it's at a 50% margin for easy math, her net's 300,000. So we took her net from 300,000 to 700,000. So we doubled her take home pay just by charging what she told people she was charging. Crazy. Excuse me,
Um,
choked up here.
um, that leads me to two questions. One
Yeah,
is
please.
if you um who really, I posted a little bit about this, but like who's taking, I have my opinions and I know because I talk to different people, who's taking advantage of that, right? Like we have all these firms that are transitioning out, they may be being acquired, they may be going to an aggregator. Like,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
how are those firms taking advantage of that situation before Jane comes to you?
Yeah, I literally, Lacey, this morning was emailing with an advisor in our coaching program who's acquiring a practice in almost this identical situation where they're underbilling by almost the same amount. It's eerily similar. And he says, Jarvis, I'm buying this practice. Like their advisor agreement is 1% across the board. Their blended rate is 0.64. He says, what am I missing here? I'm going to buy this
Mhm.
practice. I'm going to move the fees to 1% and I'm going to recap my money right there. And I said, there's a million other things to think about in a deal, but this, Lacey, to your point, is incredibly common. And so I was going to say sophisticated buyers, but just buyers in general are looking for where this is going on, and it's happening everywhere. So That's part of why you see these big headlines. Oh, they sold for 10x or 15x or whatever. Yeah, they did, but the buyer immediately went in, made these couple of small adjustments, and they recouped their investment. Whereas if you made that adjustment, you could, in that case of Jane I gave earlier, you could almost double your exit valuation again by just being aware of what you're charging and charging it.
Or just keeping the cash and not selling.
Well, and keeping the cash. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Never
Right.
mind the selling, just keeping the cash, 400,000 a year. And then let's say a 10x on EBITDA just for easy math and another 4 million when you go to exit. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a lot.
And so then back to the point in your book of like, is that worth your uncomfortable conversations?
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Of
now sometimes
clients.
we'll tell ourselves the story, right? We'll be like, well, you know what? Let's use this Jane example. I'm already making 300K a year. That's already a lot of money.
Mm,
One
mm,
advisor I helped
mm,
with this, his mom is a school teacher. He's like, my mom only makes 60 grand a year. I'm already making a 500,000. It's like, no, dude, all those stories set aside.
I know.
You had your client sign an advisor agreement at 1% or whatever the number is. You will charge what you told them you would charge. Everything else, if you feel bad about how much school teachers are making, great, charge for your services and donate the money to your local school, which is a noble cause. There's no comparison game here. It's a business. You have to run it like a business.
Yeah, especially if you already have the signed agreements. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the money in the bank. I mean, you are calculating your own fee and paying yourself. Like the only excuse at that point is your own mental state of like, you got to get
Well,
over
and
it.
let's keep in mind we're on the tail end of a 14-year bull market, right? Since 2008. Yes, I know there's been some hiccups in between, but not really. Since 2008, we've been on a 14-year bull market. It will at some point, we'll have another 2008 or 2001 or 1990 or 1973 or whatever it is. And if you're running narrow margins because you have this head trash about charging and the markets fall and your revenue falls and you can't afford to serve clients when they need you most, are you going to get a prize in heaven? Like, what are we holding out for here?
Yeah. I mean,
You know?
that's an excellent point because we don't know when it will be, but every day the market gets closer. A pullback gets
Yeah,
closer. A severe one.
yeah, yeah. Severe one, and maybe it's next year, maybe it's 10 years from now. I mean, who knows? Nobody knows. It will happen though, right? It has to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Has to.
I mean, it has to for everyone to make money because you got to have some correction or it's just
Yeah, you get the fluff out. The
um
other thing that comes up when we're doing this review, and Lacey, I know you're extremely passionate about this, is if you have clients that are being undercharged, odds are you have clients that are being overcharged.
mhm.
Which because your systems aren't solid. Like if your system can miss an account that didn't get opened or something else, your system will miss it the other way. And you and I have chatted about this on podcast. You will be nailed. The very first thing the SEC is looking at on audits is your billing schedule. And if you're overbilling by a penny, they will hang you out to dry. And so this idea of like, hey, I'm not going to worry about it. It's not a big deal. That is not accurate.
Yeah, the mistakes can go either way easily. Like
Mm-hmm.
they don't have a way that they go all the time. They can go both ways. And
Yeah.
if you're don't have a good system in place, like things fall through.
Yeah.
What about so you've talked a lot about like charge what is in your agreement. In your chapter 4, it talks about, okay, let's say we're efficient on the agreements. We're charging what
Yep.
I've already contracted. The next piece, we want to do the analysis of like who is actually over and under on the legal agreement and going to change it. How, and you specifically say you don't look at industry standards, like as to
Mhm.
what people
Well,
need to
they're all made
be.
up. Yeah, they're all made up, right? Well, this is a rant of mine, and we can debate another day. But all the industry studies are volunteered data, right? So they spam emailed a bunch of advisors, told them they'd give them a $20 gift card to Starbucks if they answered these questions, and the advisors from memory put their answers in. Now, I just mentioned this advisor, Jane. Jane was not trying to lie to me. If she had filled out
Right.
that survey, she would have said my fee is 1%, which is not true. Her fee, a blended fee, is 0.6. So we see these industry studies, they're totally made up. Even if they were accurate, the services from one office to the next are completely different. So even if the industry average was in fact 1.12% or whatever, that tells me nothing.
Well, and even the metrics, to your point at the beginning of our conversation, people don't have access to the metrics. Like
Hmm.
they can calculate it in their head that should be this 1%, but they don't necessarily have it. to
Yeah.
calculate or even the, it's a simple Excel formula, but unless you don't know it, it's not simple.
Yeah. Yeah. I keep
So,
waiting for Smart KX to start coming out with industry studies based on the data you have.
well,
Every day I say my prayers and I'm like, today be the day that Lacey releases the Smart KX study of the real data.
well, I have something exciting for you at the end of this. So, uh, what is your experience on the stats when you called all your clients and you said we're moving to this fee schedule. Like if you don't want to move to this
Mhm.
fee schedule,
Yep.
we will drop your accounts. No harm, no foul. I
Yep.
love this
Yep.
book because it gives examples and canned answers of what to say. So when
Yeah.
you are on a situation where a client's asking a question, you have a response to it. Um, what was the drop rate?
So I've done fee increases several times myself. I've helped, I don't know, hundreds of advisors do it as well. Typically, I see one, max two clients per hundred that drop.
Okay.
Max. Typically, we see zero. I've never heard of a fee increase of more than two. I suppose if you're not delivering any value and you just
Yeah.
raise fees out of the blue, that's not going to work. Follow a process like we outlined in the book. I've never seen more than one or two clients. And everyone always tells me, you know what, actually, these were clients I probably needed to fire anyway. They were always a pain in the butt. And so you're doing yourself a favor there.
And does that metric go into any of it when you're looking at your overall list of clients? Yes, there's the number, but there's also like the PETA factor of like these ones are kind of a PETA. So
Yeah. Well, don't use your fee increase to try to get rid of clients because Murphy's Law is those
Mm.
clients won't leave. And then they'll say, I just agreed to a fee increase and now you're firing me. Um, I do use that exercise though, Lacey, when we have head trash about raising fees. So we can look and say, all right, if you take your fee from one to one and a half, quick math, you can lose a third of your clients, still come out ahead on revenue. And now those clients that stayed, you can do really good work for. Again, you only lose one or two, but you can lose 50 clients out of your 150, still come out ahead, and the clients that stayed are getting a better service that they opted into. And so
because you
we
have
do
more
that and
time for
just
them.
get your head out of the
Yeah.
way.
Um,
Totally.
awesome. Well, anything before we wrap up and leave our crowd here, any hot tips or words of wisdom of what they can do right now?
Yeah, I would say anchor on something that empowers you. So a lot of times we anchor on Vanguard, that's like anchoring on Walmart or Spirit Airlines or whatever. Don't anchor on the lowest common denominator. Find someone who's doing white glove service. Maybe you think what I'm doing is great or someone else, or just look at a fully loaded variable annuity that's like 3.5% all the way in who never does value adds or beneficiary reviews or tax planning and think, all right, if clients are willing to pay 3.5% for this thing all in, I can go ahead and charge 1.5 or 175 or whatever. So watch where you're anchoring would be my biggest advice.
I love that. Okay, well, we're gonna wrap up here. Um, as we talked about a lot about revenue, Smart KX
Yeah.
is my company. We do all things AUM fee billing, and these are some dashboards that we are rolling out right now. So
Yes.
they give you these analytics firm wide. So total AUM, revenue, clients, your overall blended rate, and then really this one down in the bottom right, which people love, is like, what money are you leaving on the table?
Yeah.
And like, how much are your no bill and unassigned assets really costing you? So firm level, great. This like is something great to get you started. However, because we're also doing the fees for you, we can start digging into each individual client. So
Wow.
client list, what fee schedule, their AUM, their revenue, and then what their blended rate is. And so this is sounds like something that you really look at when you're looking at
Mm-hmm.
these compared to this overall billing rate. Who's in line,
Yeah.
who's low, who's high. So we give you all those analytics. We give you the data for your firm. We will have some industry-wide reports coming out as we have more data coming in. But one of the things that we really do different at Smart KX, which I'm really proud of, is let's say you say, John, we got to increase your fee. You can actually hit amend from here and amend that fee schedule, send that disclosure and that contract out to the client, and change the calculation immediately.
Wow.
So
That is really
instead of going
cool.
back to your office and saying, we need to change this, I've talked to John, you can actually just do it from here, and there's no more friction for you to have to lift those things to actually do the thing. Because if you already have head trash around having the conversation, then once you've had the conversation to execute, that's like another thing you got to get over. So we eliminate that for you, and then of course give you data, which we've heard from advisors. They're like, even this data backs up my conversation with John. Like, hey, you're paying 65 bips. Like
Yep.
our rate is 82.
Hmm. Yeah.
So that's what we're working on. Most of this is released, the workflows are released. And so if this is something that anyone is listening, struggling with, we're here to help. And with that, thank you so
Okay.
much. It was so lovely to have you, and it's always fun to chat. And I've put your contact information. Uh, Matthew Jarvis is a fantastic follow on LinkedIn. If you're there, I try to like elbow him.
Entertaining. Yeah. Appreciate it. I appreciate it. It makes it a lot of fun.
I know, I'm just having fun. Like I think it's a good
Me
time.
too.
So,
It's funny people to get
uh,
worked up, and I'm like, this is just fun. Like none of this is serious.
it's like, yes, we're not doing brain surgery on LinkedIn.
We're all just trolling. We're all playing office and wasting time. It's not that serious.
Paying office. Well, it was so fun chatting with you, and we'll see you on the interwebs, if not before.
Awesome, Lacey. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye.